Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started. I am Lisa Ragni, Director of Research at FARA. Thank you for joining this webinar today. We hope to bring you some useful information. As we know, we shared with you last week the great news that Friedreich ataxia has been added to the peer review medical research program for 2022. This is one of 37 special interest programs managed by the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, or CDMRP. And our speaker today will go over all of this, what the CDMRP is, and the specific program that includes FA. But I just wanted to take a few minutes to mention that this very important achievement was possible thanks to the combined effort of FARA, the National Ataxia Foundation, and the Ataxia community, both patients and researchers, and also Representative Chrissy Olahan from Pennsylvania and Representative Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut. It's important to point out that we will need to make a request every year to remain in the CDMRP. And for this reason, it's important that you apply and that you let us know that if you do so we can include this information next year when we'll make our request. Here with me moderating the webinar is Dr. Sanjay Bidishandani, who's professor at the University of Oklahoma. He's also on FARA boards of directors. Sanjay is part of the review panels on neurofibromatosis at CDMRP, and so he's familiar with the program, and we've asked him to help during the Q&A session at the end to try to facilitate questions that might be relevant for you. This webinar is recorded and we will share a link to access it later today. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Cecilia Dupéché. Dr. Dupéché is the program manager for the peer review medical research program. And as a program manager, she oversees the entire program life cycle. Dr. Dupéché obtained her PhD in microbiology and immunology at the University of São Paulo, Brazil, and went on to do a postdoc at Yale and at the University of Maryland. She has been very helpful and very generous with her time. She agreed to go over this information on the program with us with a very short notice. So please take advantage of the opportunity to have her here and ask her all the questions that you have. We'll have plenty of time at the end of the presentation. And with that, Cecilia, welcome. We'll share your slide.
So thank you, everyone. Can everybody hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you for reaching out. I hope that this webinar is useful to you for your application process to the DoD. I know that it can be a little bit daunting if you haven't done this before, so please feel free to ask questions. You can interrupt me if the moderators are okay with that, or we can take questions at the end. So thank you for the kind introduction, Liz. As Liz said, I am one of the program managers for one of the programs under CDMRP. The program that I manage is called Peer Reviewed Medical Research Program, which is where FA is now a topic area, and we'll go through that. So next slide, please. So today we're going to talk about a little bit an overview of CDMRP. I think it's important to contextualize, give you an overview of the organization. Our program cycle, all the programs of CDMRP, they run the same type of program cycle. So if you decide if there's a researcher that has some other line of investigation that aligns with other programs, this will be useful as well. Then I'm going to go into the peer-reviewed medical research program, which is the PRMRP, our open funding opportunities that we have now, and some additional resources and strategies for success for a grant application. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start by situating our organization. The CDMRP is located within the Department of Defense, and then the Army Futures Command, AFC. We administer biomedical research that supports basic, translational, and clinical research projects, training, and infrastructure as well. So USAMRDC oversees these programs, and CDMRP is the office within USAMRDC that implements and manages funding for biomedical research programs that are directed by Congress. Next slide, please. So this is the vision and mission of our organization. Our vision is very ambitious and quite straightforward. We want to transform healthcare through innovative and impactful research. And we responsibly manage collaborative research that discovers, develops, and delivers healthcare solutions for service members, veterans, and American public. We are under the DoD, right? So it's an ambitious vision and mission, but that's what we're here for. Next slide, please. And the success of CDMRP is really achieved through a unique partnership. And this is between Congress through the appropriations, the partnership between our stakeholders, and that involves the consumers. They play a very important role in lobbying for the funds and also for the researchers, our stakeholders, our programmatic panel, all providing guidance and what we need. We really do try to fund very impactful research that's going to touch the lives of patients. We fund research throughout the entire world, and we all do that using a competitive open process, a two-tier review process of review that involves scientists, clinicians, and consumers. And I will be talking about that more later. Next slide, please. So here I just want to touch about some hallmarks about CDMRP, which is the foundation of our organization. And I think it's very important to go through them. So the first thing is that Congress adds targeted research funds to the DoD budget. We do not request these funds. They are added to the DoD bill, right? We cannot lobby for these funds. They're added to the DoD bill. We fund high impact, innovative research. And this is very important because we fund research. We try to fund research that other agencies might not venture to fund. We go through great lengths to avoid duplication with other funding agencies, and we target unfunded, unmet gaps. And we have a whole process to do that. We have a team of science officers, which will be a team of people that once an award is recommended for funding, they take over throughout all the cycle of the award management. And once negotiation starts, we really dig through to see if that proposal was submitted to another organization. And we do not fund duplicative awards. So that is one thing that we're very proud of. Our funding opportunities, they're publicly announced and competed, so they're open to everybody. We do not direct science. It's all we believe in funding the best and letting them execute as the vision that they have. We follow the National Academy of Medicine recommended model for application review, which was recommended very early on when the organization was set up. And I will be talking about that in later slides, so I won't spend much time here. We are very proud to have consumers participate throughout the process, and they are really the true north and foundation of the programs. We really believe that consumer participation is the pillar of CDMRP. We do this, we have these programs because of the consumers, because of our patients, and that we can't imagine having this without consumer input in all the steps of our program, be it peer review, at programmatic review. So this is really something that we continue and we highlight a lot. We can annually, because our funds are given to us annually and we obligate them up front, so we can adapt each year's program's visions and investment strategies, and we can pivot things rapidly, and that allows us for a rapid response to changing needs. So we have funding flexibility exactly because our funds are obligated yearly. So we obligate that our funds are appropriated yearly. So funds can be obligated up front. We have limited out-year budget commitments. We do not have continuing fund. And we don't have a pay line different from other organizations, right? So funding recommendations, because of our two-tier review process, they are based on portfolio composition. adherence to mechanism intent, relative impact, and technical merit. And this we will be talking about later. So that's why we have really our 2-tier review process. So not necessarily the proposal that was best scored during peer review is the one that's going to end up being recommended for funding. We have a transparency and accountability to our stakeholders. This can be seen through our website, through all of the reports that we publish. And we are proud to say that we have the lowest management costs throughout the funding organizations, which maximizes our research dollars. Next slide, please. So this is a list of our FY22 appropriations. These are all the programs managed by CDMRP. We have 35 now for FY22. And highlighted in red there, you have peer-reviewed medical. And this is a different program because the congressional language only specifies the topic areas that are going to be funded under this program. And we have $370 million in appropriation for this year. We also have peer-reviewed cancer that also does have topic areas, but these are the only two programs that have topic areas. The others have congressional language that specifies what can be funded under them. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk about our program cycle and the review process. And all this applies to all of CDMRP programs. Next slide, please. So the program cycle starts really with the congressional appropriation, right? So once we receive the congressional appropriation, we have the first thing is vision setting, and that's where we devise an investment strategy. We see the landscape of research, and we devise an investment strategies through our funding opportunities. And once we have that true congressional appropriation, we can release our funding opportunities. Once funding opportunities are released, we can move on to peer review. And then once the proposals are peer reviewed, we move on to programmatic review that you see there. Now, it's important to note that this process, it really, until we get the recommended for funding letter, this process does take a while. It takes about 12 months, right? So until you receive a letter saying recommended for funding letter, if that's the case, it's going to take about a year between the time that you submit a proposal until you receive that notification. And I would like to highlight here that our funding authority, the funding decision authority, is really our commanding general here. Next slide, please. So going a little bit deeper into the 2-tier review process. So really the goal here is to develop funding recommendations that balance the most meritorious science across many disciplines and really offer the highest promise to fulfill programmatic goals that we put out in our funding opportunities. So it's really a partnership between peer review and programmatic review. Peer review, as we all know, because it's in all funding organizations, right? It is to determine the absolute merit of the absolute scientific merit of a proposal. Now, a little bit different than other organizations, we do not have standing panels. So reviewers are recruited, especially for PRMRP, because we have such varying topic areas. Reviewers are recruited each year based on the expertise needed. So we don't have a standing panel. And we do not have resubmissions in this case, right? We don't, if a proposal was not recommended for funding, we're not going to have a resubmission for that. Next year, it will be a different panel. We do not have contact between applicants, reviewers, and program staff. So we are not directing science. We're not providing that feedback in that sense. It's truly an open competition that we can guarantee you. If you're not getting the guidance, nobody else is. These webinars are the most guidance that we give. So it's really to determine the absolute merit of the proposal. And as we know, it's a criterion-based evaluation of the full proposal. And those criterion are really listed, the criteria, they're listed in the program announcement. And the outcome of the peer review is a summary statement. Then after we have that, the scored summary statement, that moves on to programmatic review. And programmatic review is now we have a programmatic panel, and that's listed on our website. And it's a comparison among proposals of high scientific merit, right? And it's really there to determine the adherence to the intent, the program relevance, and the potential for impact. How is this going to impact the landscape of research? We do not have a pay line, like I said, so it's not going to be based on the highest scores of peer review. And the funds here will be obligated upfront. So it's not going to be based on out-year budget commitments or unless we do have to impose some milestone. And the outcomes here are going to be the funding recommendations, either recommended for funding or not recommended for funding. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk about the peer-reviewed medical research program. Next slide. So here you have the vision and mission of this program. The program was initiated in 1999 and really to address diseases and conditions with relevance to military health. That was the guidance received. And the direction from Congress was to support research of clear scientific merit, that was the congressional language, and direct relevance to military health in specified topic areas. And we'll talk about the topic areas in a later slide. But my point here is that our vision and our mission, they clearly summarize the congressional intent here. And it's really to improve the health, well-being, and care of military service members, veterans, and beneficiaries. And we try to encourage, identify, select, and manage medical research projects of clear scientific merit that lead to impactful, and you're going to hear the word impactful several times here and throughout this presentation, impactful advances in military healthcare. Next slide, please. So here's the funding history of PRMRP. And you can see that it's a program that has grown significantly throughout the years, right? And one thing that I want to highlight with this is the congressional language that you can see there at the bottom clearly specifies it shall be devoted only to the purpose listed. That's what it comes, the funding, the appropriation shall be devoted only to the purpose listed. And you can see there that in FY07, there is no bar, and that's not because it's missing. That's because in previous years, funds from this program were used to fund research that was not related to the topic areas listed. So Congress did not appropriate funds for the program that year. In FY14, for actually no rhyme or reason, it was just really lobbying efforts, funds quadrupled. And that was, we received many more topic areas than we were expecting. And ever since then, we have grown steadily and receiving from your efforts, from advocacies like yours, we have received many more topic areas under the program. So we have now funded 169 topic areas throughout the history of the program. And we have received a total of $3.4 billion in appropriation. Next slide, please. So every year with each year's appropriation, we receive the topic areas. We receive a list of topic areas that can be funded with that year's appropriation. And you will see there in blue, highlighted in blue, we have the new topic areas that were never given to the program. And in green, we have topic areas that are returning. And the returning topic areas are really topic areas that came maybe in FY19, FY16, and for some reason they fell off the program because of lack of lobbying efforts or advocacy groups. And then now they made a comeback, they made a return. That's Rett syndrome is a very good example. It was off the program last year and now it's back this year. So what's really important is that applicants must address at least one of the topic areas which are directed by Congress. Next slide, please. So as you can imagine, it is very difficult to manage a program like this, right? So for strategic and administrative purposes, we have allocated these topic areas into major buckets, which we call them portfolios. So PRMRP now takes a portfolio-driven approach, and you can see them in the rectangles listed there to your right. So we have 9 major portfolios that align with the basic, with the major areas of research, of scientific research. And if we move to the next slide, we have developed strategic goals for each of these portfolios that really are intended to maximize the impact of the topic areas on the health and well-being of our service members. And these strategic goals that we have developed, they are aligned to the chevrons of the continuum of care to further maximize the impact of our research funds to the patients and the community. And I'll show an example later of how this looks like. So next slide, please. So this is just an overview of how our portfolio looks. And we do fund the entire clinical pipeline. So all the development ideas from initial concepts all the way to clinical trials and team science. And this is for the last fiscal years. This is just a distribution of funds throughout all of these portfolios. But what I really want to highlight here is that there's no pre-selected allocation of funds per topic area or per portfolio. It's really by merit, by scientific merit, and programmatic balance here. And you can see that it's pretty much well distributed, especially if you look into the distribution or the allocation of topic areas per each of the portfolio. Next slide, please. So in order to apply these goals and to develop our strategy, we have 5 funding mechanisms for to fuel our pipeline, right? And here's just a snapshot of them, and I will talk about them into further detail in the next 2 slides. So this year and our previous years, we have 5 funding opportunities available. And they go all the way from innovative concepts, again, established ideas, team science, translational, and clinical trials. And there in the little bubbles, you have the name of these award mechanisms. And we fund all the way from bench to bedside. And the direct cost limit is listed there for your view. So this slide is just a nice snapshot, a summary of all the funding opportunities that PRMRP is offering. Now, what's important is that an applicant will have to address one topic area in one portfolio strategic goal, one portfolio specific strategic goal. Next slide, please. Now going a little bit further into our funding opportunities. So we will have all funding opportunities this year. So some of them require a letter of intent, and some of them may require a pre-proposal. So these are our funding opportunities that require a letter of intent. You're not required, an invitation is not required. So these are the award mechanisms. We have a discovery award, an investigator-initiated award, and a technology therapeutic award. The intent of each of these mechanisms are listed at the bottom of the rectangle there. So the Discovery Award is really to support the exploration of highly innovative concepts or untested ideas. Preliminary data is not necessary. The Investigator-Initiated Award is more similar to an R01 of the NIH, so it supports basic through translational research that will improve and impact the field of research or patient care. And Technology Therapeutic Award really supports translational of preclinical findings into impactful products for clinical application. So it's really that research project that's basically taking it all the way to an IND, right? So these award mechanisms, they do not require invitation, but you are required to submit a letter of intent. And this letter of intent is really for program purposes only, so we can start setting up the peer review process. The direct cost limit is listed there. I'm sure you have availability to these slides, and the eligibility for applicants is also listed there. Next slide, please. So here we have the funding opportunities that are available for all of the that are required, that a pre-proposal is required, right? So here, after you submit a pre-proposal, you will be either invited to submit or not invited to submit. So we have a focused program award there. And this is really, and I apologize that this 200K is incorrect there. We need to change that. I can send a new slide deck. So it is actually 7.2 million there. So this is really a multidisciplinary research program of at least 4 distinct but complementary projects addressing an overarching goal. And it's really meant to bring teams together. Then we have our clinical trial with planning phase and our clinical trial. So this is all under the same funding opportunity, but you can have an option of submitting just a clinical trial with the planning phase. And the planning phase is just for 500K. You have 18 months to finish it. And it's really to support the regulatory costs for trial planning to include IND, IDE submission. And you must have a FDA approval before you can proceed to the trial phase. And our clinical trials for PRMRP, we really do, there is no limit to the budget that you can submit. We do, that's how our programmatic panel wanted. We don't want to be restrictive or prescriptive on, we want to see your idea. And we really want to support the rapid implementation of these trials with very novel and potential to have impact on patient care. And they can range from small through large scale. Now, what's really important here, a pre-proposal submission is required, right? And then our programmatic panel will review, and an application submission will be only by invitation only. Next slide, please. So the peer review criteria and the programmatic review criteria will be listed in the funding opportunities, and I encourage you to look at that very closely. This is just an example, so I just put snapshots from the program announcement. You will have scored criterion there that I listed there, and it varies from each of the funding opportunities. So there you have impact, research, strategy, and feasibility, transition plan, and personnel. And for each one of those criteria, there's a list of explanations that you would have to address. So to what extent the project impacts a critical problem or question in one of the topic areas, which is how you will be evaluated. And then you have an unscored criteria, which they will they won't be scored, but they will contribute to the overall score. Next slide, please. This is for the programmatic review criteria. Again, these are all listed in our funding opportunities. And this is just a snapshot from our program announcements. And here you have all of the ratings and evaluations of the programmatic reviewers and what they will be looking for. And I encourage you to, again, take a look at this very closely before putting together your proposal. And we also do have on our website our programmatic panel members. So take a look at who will be evaluating your proposal, right? And they consist of scientists, clinicians, consumers. We do have consumers on our programmatic panel. For PRMRP, because it's so diverse, we receive so many topic areas, we do have a bunch of ad hoc consumers and from a variety of representative organizations. So this is just an example, but I do encourage you to take a look, and they vary in different funding opportunities. Next slide, please. So one thing that's very different from other funding organizations, and I think it's important for us to touch here, this is required for all funding opportunities for PRMRP, okay? So it's a military health statement. And with this, we want to answer the question, is the proposed research relevant to healthcare needs of military service members, veterans, military beneficiaries, and or the American public? And I fully recognize this is a broad statement, but it's a statement that grantsmanship goes a long way. And what we really want is to answer examples of the statements that you see below. So like dual use capacity of the proposed research of the product that you're investigating that would benefit the civilian population, and also a need related to military health, aspects of this target disease and condition with direct relevance to military health, a contribution to family readiness of service members that are affected by family members that have the condition. So how can this affect mission readiness, even if not directly related to service members? And if the product is intended to support the warfighter, which is not the case here, but what are the requirements for use in deployed settings? So these are all things that to be considered when drafting our military health statement. Again, required for all funding opportunities, like I said, you have to pick one of the PRMRP topic areas and one of the PRMRP portfolio-specific strategic goals. And an example of that, I think I put that on the next slide. So this is the neuroscience, yes, because it's the largest one. So there are several topic areas that are assigned to our neuroscience portfolio. It is our largest portfolio. So these are the topic areas that are allocated to the neuroscience portfolio. So a researcher would have to, when submitting the pre-proposal or the application, they would have to pick one of these topic areas and then which strategic goal they are going to address with the research. So the strategic goals, they're meant to be broad and they can match with many of the topic areas on the side. So we have to, it is your job as a researcher to see which ones would best fit with your research and would have the best chances of being peer-reviewed and programmatically reviewed well, given these parameters that we're giving here. Next slide. And this is just another, the continuation of it. And like I said, the strategic goals, they come under the chevrons of the continuum of care. So these are some important submission deadlines. And like I mentioned, the discovery awards, the IRA, the TTDAs, they require a letter of intent. The focus program award and the CTA, it's only a pre-proposal. These are the dates listed there. So this is an important resource for you to have. So additional tips and resources and strategies for success that we have there. So I think the single most important tip that we can give you and anybody that's applying for the DoD is truly to, it sounds cliche, but it isn't. It's read the announcement carefully. All the information that you need is there. We take weeks to draft that program announcement. We make sure that all the information is there. So it really is very important that you address that you read the program announcement very carefully. I can guarantee you that the questions are there. That is reviewed by many layers and many people. Understanding the goals of the program and the intent of the award mechanism, and if your research fits into the award mechanism is very important. And the review criteria, take a look at the review criteria and how you're going to be reviewed. That's also very important. So the program goals, focus areas, the award intent, right? The required eligibility, that's also very important. And most of all, lastly, the deadlines. So different than other funding organizations, the DoD does not extend deadlines. So we do not have grace periods. Aside from a hurricane, any disasters of natures, we do not have grace periods. So be mindful of the deadlines. Next slide, please. So in the next two slides, I've put in we have there a few tips, just like related to relevance, impact, innovation, feasibility, which are all part of the criteria that we have. And the other slide is the same as well. And it's just a few tips of how to address, like propose solutions to important problems, innovation, impact and innovation, as you saw throughout my presentation and as the beginning of CDMRP overview. There, it's very important for the organization. So identify gaps that will be filled and novel approaches that will be used. Those are very important points to highlight throughout the proposal. clearly articulate translatability and how will this work make a difference, right? Feasibility, which is important for research and research strategy. That's also very important to address the points that are there. Next slide, please. And I think planning for timelines, like I said, it include and allow adequate time in the project plan for regulatory approvals if we're going for the clinical trial, for collaborations, understand the rules and plan for differences in funding process. That's very important. And grantsmanship, I think that goes a long way, how we communicate and how we draft important statements like the military health statement and military relevance statement. So those are things to be very much aware. Next slide. And here are just some resources. You can always subscribe to email notifications. If you go to our website, you can sign up for listserv through CDMRP website or also in eBRAP. Next slide, please. And we have several webinars listed for funding opportunity webinar series that I thought was important to just list here. And I think that was my last slide. And I will be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you for navigating through the technical issues.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Let's see. So I think there are some in the chat, but maybe I'll ask Sanjay to start us up with a question or two while I read through the questions. If you have any questions, as I said, you can type them in the Q&A box.
So, thanks, Cecilia, for this. A lot of our applicants are quite familiar with the NIH Application System, and you've done a pretty good job of highlighting some of the things that are specific to this particular mechanism here. One of the things that I don't think most people are used to is considering consumer reviewers and this two-tiered system where you have the initial review and then you have the programmatic panel review. Is there something you can tell people who are familiar with the standard NIH system, maybe that could they add something to their grant applications that make it be more successful when consumer reviewers are reading it, and maybe even something about programmatic panel reviewers?
Yes, so all our submissions, they will require a lay abstract, right? I think that's where you're referring to. So for a lay language, because the consumer reviewer will have a rating and that will be written there as well. So that is an important aspect to, I'm glad you asked that question. That is an important aspect to consider. So many of these consumer reviewers that we have, they are patients with the disease and the condition, and their insight is hugely invaluable to us because it's not only about research strategy and feasibility and how it's moving the landscape of research for us, but it's also, we want the opinion of the consumers and how that is going to impact. So if we have a specific product, a specific drug, a therapeutic, we want to know from the patient how that is going to be implemented and how that's going to change them. So a statement and a lay abstract, when it's well written and it impacts the consumer and the consumer can clearly comprehend that also does go a long way. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Liz, do you want to go through the chat box or?
Sure.
Gino has a question there.
Yeah, I think I can combine two. So Gino asked, is it possible to be co-PI or co-investigator on two separate TTDA applications on different topics with different molecules? And another related question is, if justified, can you address more than one goal, one topic?
No, you cannot address more than one goal. You have to pick a goal. It's one goal in one topic area.
And can you be a co-PI or co-investigator on two separate TTDA applications?
So I think the TTDA with partnering IIRA, yes. For an IIRA, yes.
The question was specifically about TTDA.
Yeah.
I would have to open the funding opportunity because I think that we do not have that option anymore.
Okay, so maybe we'll get back to you, Gino, on this.
Yeah.
Then let's see. So the eligibility sounds like it invites academic PI research. Are small company applicants invited?
Can small
businesses and small
yes.
companies? Right,
yes, yes, it is not restricted to, yes.
You know, another question I had for some of our applicants is, you know, many of our applicants, at least to FARA, are international researchers. And is there anything you can, you know, say to advise people who are, I know they can apply just like anybody else, but is there something that you can provide as advice to international applicants? Do you see something that might, you know, I don't know, pitfalls that some other people have used that you might be able to give us some advice?
No, we do not have any hurdles. I know that I get this question a lot. I don't know if it's because of the NIH but we don't have any huge hurdles with international PIs. It is.
Yeah. So, for instance, you know, for the military health statement, I mean, how is that perceived when coming from an international PI, for example?
It's perceived that is not an issue. As long as it's addressed the same, that is truly not an issue.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. Yeah. Liz?
Okay, so we have a couple of questions about, can you share the slide? Can we share the slides with them that you sent us? Maybe the revised with the
yes,
number.
Let me just change that because that is wrong. Yes, that is a mistake.
Yeah, so we will share them. We will share the slide. And then another technical one is EBRAP, the portal for submitting the LOI.
Yes.
And is there a page limit for the LOI for the full application or the full application?
Yes, it is all written in the program announcement. Yes, and it varies. Yes.
Okay. So then are you able to give an example of how a successful application for a rare disease research progress that doesn't have an immediately obvious relevance to military veteran health, and how this application was successful, and what the way they were able to satisfy the criteria? Or it says, or is the relevance to the American public only sufficient to create a successful application?
No, I mean, a well-written military relevant statement would have some statistics, would have some, we do fund rare diseases, and absolutely all our funded proposals and recommended for funded proposals, they are on our website. You can, the transparency is there. You can search our website and you will find them there. We cannot share them. We are not able to share those military relevant. I do get this question a lot. I wish I could, we can't. But it is possible. I do suggest that there are resources that can be, that the PI can find. They can reach out to collaborators, and there are means to do that. But just, I recommend trying to fulfill. I listed those criteria there on the slides, and I think that is the best way of achieving. And the program announcement also has some examples, but that's as far as we can. That's the guidance that we can provide.
Sanjay, do you think you have? Oh, yeah, I was going to ask you if you had. Yeah.
You know, so you know, as Liz said earlier, I serve on the programmatic panel for the fibromatosis program. I think we have a relatively easy job because we are just balancing NF1, NF2, and schwannomatosis. You know, you've got a list of conditions. So I don't know if you can give us some insight into how the programmatic panel reviews two equally well-scored grants, but let's say one is for a more prevalent condition that affects more people, and one is for a rarer condition. Do they weigh that when they're deciding which one gets preference over the other?
No, I think our programmatic panel does a very good job. It's part of our goals. It's part of our, I didn't list our program goals, but we do have, we come with the mentality. It's part of PRMRP's strategic goals as a panel that we have to fund in as many topic areas as possible. So that is a given when we come. We also divide our programmatic, when we do our programmatic review, in subgroups, right? So we are reviewing by someone, it's not because we have 9 portfolios, but we are reviewing in subgroups. So it's not like you are, neuro is competing with internal medicine that is competing with, no. So we are just, the programmatic review happens in subsets, and then they're scored here, they're scored in their individual silos, and then those scores are rack and stacked. So it's not really, we make it as fair as possible. And then even that, we try to see, well, how many topic areas are we funding? We try to normalize along every step of the way to make sure that all the topic areas are being funded. Now, there are some topic areas that just, we either do not receive enough proposals or they score really poorly, and we can't, there's a limit to the score that we can actually propose to fund, right? That they score not, I mean, even before in peer review.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally, yeah, thank you for that. So actually, how many programmatic panel meetings do you have? Is it just one, or is it several different ones? So
I have several, because we receive, I mean, the number of proposals that we receive is 2,000. Mm-hmm. So it's way too much. So we have one for one mechanism. So the discovery awards, they're reviewed in one bucket. And then we have one for the larger mechanisms. And those larger mechanisms, they're all divided in each of their portfolios, and they're reviewed within, comparatively reviewed within.
So that's the peer review level. But then when you do the programmatic...
No, I'm talking about the programmatic review.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, okay. Liz,
so our peer review has so many panels that you wouldn't even...
Yeah, there are a few more questions. One is, isn't the review of small business TTDA applications completely different in CDMRP and PRMRP?
In what sense? They have different review criteria that's in the program announcement.
Yeah, maybe Gino, if you can clarify the question. Then
I was just going to say Dr. Tremblay has many questions.
Right, yeah.
Each award mechanism has its own review criteria, right?
Okay.
And not all, like I said, not all award mechanisms are reviewed comparatively. That wouldn't be fair. You can't compare a 200K discovery award with a TTDA. So that's why they're in programmatic review, they're separate.
Okay, another question. I'm confused between the LOI stage, pre-registration, and pre-proposal. Can you explain the different stages?
So the LOI stage does not, you will submit an LOI. LOI is exactly what the name says, is a letter of intent. It does not require an invitation. So you have to submit an LOI to say, so I think the first deadline for LOI for the Discovery Award is April 25th, if I'm not mistaken, right? From the table that's there. You must submit an LOI before you submit the full proposal, but you are not going to be invited to submit. However, if you have not submitted the LOI, you cannot submit the full proposal. The intent of the LOI is because we have so many topic areas. We need to start, it's purely for programmatic purposes, for us to start setting up peer review. We need to know in what topic area you're going to submit, what strategic goal you're going to address, just so we know how to start setting up the panels. That's the intent of the LOI. A pre-proposal is something that's going to be peer-reviewed in a way, right? We are going to review it, and then we are going to either invite for a full proposal or not invite for a full proposal. That's the difference.
So who reviews the pre-proposals?
The pre-proposal is used for the larger mechanisms, for focus program award, the team science, and for the clinical trials.
No, I was asking who reviews them. Do you have a panel?
Our programmatic panel,
okay.
Our programmatic panel, and our ad hoc reviewers. Yes.
Then is the maximum duration of a grant only 1 year or more? I think you showed that in your slides. It can be up to 4, right?
It can be up to 4, yes.
And then discovery award, investigation initiator, or technology. If I select the wrong one, is the application redirected? If it doesn't select the right area.
It really depends on how we catch it, because we have hundreds of proposals. If you submit it in a different date, a discovery award would be very different if the budget is very different, but if we catch it during compliance, we're probably going to catch that because your budget is going to be hugely exceeding, and then we might reject it and there might be an appeal, and then we could figure that out and put it in the right one. But it's not something that we would naturally catch it. It would be rejected in compliance because your budget exceeded it.
And then a question about Alzheimer's. It's Alzheimer's one of the diseases that can be addressed this year?
Alzheimer's, no.
There's a separate program.
It's a separate program, yes.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, yeah, Gina was clarifying that question about the small business TTDA. I don't think that one could apply for this cycle, CDMRP, PRMRP as a small business versus a university. I thought the applications are completely different and the reviewers are different between a small business applying versus a university applying or a nonprofit applying.
So at the peer review level, we have different panels that review IRAs, that review TTDAs at the peer review level. They are reviewed by, we have over 100 panels that review these proposals. They're separated by mechanisms, if that's the question there.
Okay. Let's see, I don't see any more questions. Sanjay, do you have any more questions for Cecilia?
No, I don't have any questions, just to thank her for taking the time and helping us. And hopefully we'll have the updated slides available to share with everybody. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and the link to view the webinar will also be shared. Just I remind you, please let us know if you're applying. You have all my contact information. Also, feel free to reach out with other questions. I will try to get answers for you. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Cecilia.
I hope that this was useful to everybody.
It was really useful. Thank you so much.
All right.
And thank you, Sanjay.
And good luck, everybody.
Thank you.